Hello everyone, I'm Isaac and welcome back to my channel. Now this video is going to start a bit differently than my normal videos because I feel this video needs a bit more of an introduction than most of my other videos. Now to begin with, the video we're going to be looking at today is by TAP Student Action, and in this particular video they decided to invite Dr. Michelle Cretela to speak. Now Dr. Cretela is the president of the American College of Pediatricians. Now you might hear this name and think this organization is some kind of medical journal, but in fact, it has no medical accreditation whatsoever. It is actually an anti-LGBT hate group as labeled by the Southern Poverty Law Center that was formed in 2002 when the American Academy of Pediatrics released a statement that said that gay parents are no danger to their children, and purposely gave their own organization a similar name in order to get people to confuse their organization with a real medical journal. Now after I learned all this and heard some of our arguments, I realized that they sounded oddly familiar, and when I checked, sure enough, this is in fact the same person that authored the LifeSite article I reviewed earlier on this channel, which I will link below. Now in that video I said that she should not be working with children in any kind of medical capacity, but in light of this new information, I was wrong to say that. What I should have said is that this woman should have her medical license revoked. As the person that is in the position she is in, she is a clear danger to not just trans people, but anyone that falls under the LGBT+ umbrella, especially children, considering that children are far more vulnerable than adults. But with all that out of the way, today we're going to be looking at the video entitled, How to Debunk Transgender Badness in 2 Minutes. So without further ado, let's begin.
Essentially, transgender ideology holds that people can be born into the wrong body. It's simply not true.
Actually, trans people don't necessarily believe that, as there are a whole host of explanations to explain why trans people are the way they are. If you want to learn more about the different explanations, you can watch ContraPoints' video, Transgenders, which I will link below in the description. But what reasons does Dr. Cretela give?
Human sexuality is binary.
And once again, we see Dr. Cretela makes the same mistake as in her LifeSite article, in that she uses the wrong term here. What we are talking about here is gender identity, not sexual orientation, which is what the term sexuality refers to here, neither of which are binaries.
Okay, we know this because in nature, reproduction is the rule. And human beings, we engage in sexual reproduction. You need a man and a woman to do that.
So essentially, her first real argument can be boiled down to Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Now, considering her position as president of the American College of Pediatricians, I had the bar set pretty low, and yet she somehow still went lower. In any case, this argument is completely irrelevant, as there are ways in which trans people have undergone medical transition to have biological children, and not all trans people have ever medically transitioned. Furthermore, reproduction is not the rule of nature, as there are hundreds of different species across the animal kingdom that engage in some kind of homosexual behavior. In other words, you pulled that rule out of your ass and ignored any and all data that contradicted it, because you think that the rule you made up excludes trans people.
Women are XX. Those are the sex chromosomes. Women have two X's. Men have an X and a Y. Those are genetic markers. They're genetic markers for female and male, respectively. Okay? Binary. That's the rule, and it's self-evident.
This assertion once again ignores all the data that contradicts it. And there is in fact so much data to contradict this assertion that Nature magazine, one of the most well-respected peer-reviewed medical journals, has recently published a statement saying that trying to determine someone's gender by their chromosomes is entirely unscientific, in which it cites several types of atypical formations of the sex chromosomes, one of which is Swyer Syndrome, in which the individual has XY sex chromosomes but develop a female reproductive system, including a uterus and fallopian tubes. However, the gonads do not develop properly and typically become cancerous, thus requiring them to be removed. People with Swyer syndrome are typically raised as girls and identify as women, and although they cannot produce their own eggs, they in fact can become pregnant with a donated egg or embryo. In other words, two people with XY chromosomes can in fact reproduce.
Transgender, someone who identifies as transgender, however, that's not a problem in their body. Gender identity, all identities, they're in our thoughts. Thoughts and feelings, those are not hardwired, they develop, and they may be factually wrong or factually correct.
Firstly, just because something develops does not mean it isn't hardwired. For example, sexual attraction develops over the course of someone's life. Yet you would never assert that someone having sexual attraction is not hardwired. Second, the data overwhelmingly supports being transgender is hardwired, as in some cases children are identifying as transgender as young as 3 years old. And the scientific data shows that binary trans people have brains that are structured and function more similarly to cisgender people of the gender they identify as. And that any attempt to change someone's gender identity is not only completely ineffective, but psychologically harmful. And someone's gender identity is only factually incorrect if you determine gender by chromosomes, which is again, unscientific.
The definition of a delusion is a fixed false belief. So if I persistently, consistently insist that I am Margaret Thatcher, or persistently, consistently insist that I am a cat, or I'm an amputee trapped in a normal body, I am delusional. And in fact, there are people who believe they are amputees trapped in a normal body. They are appropriately diagnosed as having body identity integrity disorder. If you want to cut off an arm or a leg, you're mentally ill. But if you want to cut off healthy breasts and genitals, oh, then you're transgender and you don't have a mental illness.
Your analogy here is entirely fallacious. In order for you to be Margaret Thatcher, you would have to have the memories, experiences, and personality of Margaret Thatcher, which isn't physically possible, and it is not possible for someone to have a brain more similar to that of a cat than a human. But it is possible to have a brain more similar to that of the opposite sex, as mentioned previously. And as for the body identity integrity disorder, or BIID, there is no scholarly research that can establish any positive effects to amputation, as according to an article by the American Journal of Bioethics, quote, even the argument that amputation would be the only effective BIID therapy does not hold. First, their success has not been proven scientifically, only anecdotally. Second, at least sometimes the success is not sustainable. Some amputated patients develop further amputation desires. Third, less invasive and effective therapies can be expected. End quote. None of which applies to transgender people, as the success of transitioning has been proven scientifically and have been proven to be sustainable. And there is no evidence anywhere that says any alternative treatments are available to trans people, or at least no treatments that are effective and don't cause horrific psychological damage.
Individuals with disorders of sex development are being used as pawns in the fight for basically a civil right to a mental illness. There's no such thing as a civil right to a mental illness, but that is in fact what we are dealing with the transgender rights movement.
Being transgender is not a mental disorder, so no, this is not a movement for the right to mental illness. But thank you for the peek at your tinfoil collection. In any case, that's the end of the video, and honestly, I hope that if you could not see before, that now you realize why I would call for this woman to have her medical license revoked, as all of her arguments seem to pull rules from nowhere and ignore any and all scientific data that contradicts her assertions, which is precisely why the American College of Pediatricians has been labeled an anti-LGBT hate group by Southern Poverty Law Center. In any case, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like, subscribe for more content, and I will see you all next time.